My name is Lydia Collins, and the day my marriage cracked open wasn't in a courtroom or after a screaming match. It happened during a condo viewing on a Thursday afternoon. Ethan and I had been married for 15 years. I was the quiet wife, the agreeable one, the woman who never made a fuss if he changed plans or dismissed my opinions. I learned to read the weather in his voice and adjust myself accordingly. A lifetime of emotional compromise, camouflaged as cooperation. He was successful, confident, the kind of man who thrived on making decisions. I let him. That's what I thought love meant until the day we stepped into that glossy, sunlit condo on the 17th floor. It was gorgeous. Open layout, modern design, floor-to-ceiling windows that drank in the skyline. The seller was a tall German man named Hans, friendly but reserved. Ethan launched into conversation with him almost immediately, and he spoke in German. I stood by the kitchen island, smiling politely, pretending I was just admiring the countertops. But I wasn't. I was listening, because what Ethan didn't know, what he never cared to ask, was that I had been learning German for the past year, quietly, at night, after he fell asleep. Something about the language had always fascinated me, and I finally decided to do something for myself. So when Ethan chuckled and said, "Min Frau muss das alles nicht wissen," it's a-hole. It entscheid. My wife doesn't need to know any of this. I pay. I decide. I froze. It wasn't the words. Not exactly. It was the confirmation. The quiet little slap of truth that I had felt 100 times, but never had said out loud. I wasn't an equal in our marriage. I was a dependent. The smile on my face didn't move. I nodded when Hans looked my way. But inside, something shifted. Something permanent. All the years of tiptoeing around Athens moods, of making myself smaller so he could feel larger, collapsed in a single, scalding wave of clarity. I didn't say anything in the car on the way home. He talked about the condo, the parking, the potential for resale. I listened with the same fake smile I had used for a decade. But my silence wasn't submission anymore. It was fuel. I stared out the window, counting how many words I had learned in German. Enough, apparently, to understand my husband's contempt. That night, I lay beside him while he scrolled through his phone, already forgetting everything he said. He didn't notice that I was wide awake, that I was planning, that I had stopped pretending, because something had cracked open in me. And this time, I wasn't going to seal it shut. The next morning felt like walking through glass. Every sound was sharp. The scrape of a chair, the drip of the coffee maker, the way Ethan's footsteps echoed like they owned the house. He turned on the news and sat down like nothing had happened, like he hadn't called me irrelevant in another language while shopping for our future. I stood in the hallway, staring at the back of his head. My heart wasn't racing. It was calm to calm, like the still air before a storm. I was done avoiding thunder, whose name goes on the condo deed. I asked. He turned, eyebrows raised. What? You said you'd handle the paperwork. I continued, my voice steady. But whose name would go on it? He blinked. Mine? Of course. I mean ours. I'd put your name, too. Why are you asking that? I didn't answer right away. I stepped into the room and sat across from him. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Ich habe Jeed's word verstanden." Ethan. He stared at me. What? I understood every word you said yesterday. In German. His mouth parted slightly, then closed. His eyes flickered shock, then confusion, then something else, fear. I watched him flinch like I'd struck him. But it wasn't the fact that he'd said it. It was that I heard it. You were pretending? He said slowly. No, I replied. I was surviving. He leaned forward, trying to reassemble his composure. Lydia, come on. You're blowing this out of proportion. I was just negotiating. It's business. You weren't talking about business, I said. You were talking about me. He got up and started pacing, running a hand through his hair. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being awake. For the first time, I watched him realize he had no script for this version of me. What do you want me to say? He snapped. Nothing. I said. I've spent 15 years listening to nothing. I'm used to it. That stung. I saw it land. I've always taken care of you. He muttered. Double quotes. No. Ethan, you've taken control of me. He looked away. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood up, picked up my phone from the side table, and walked toward the bedroom. I'm not staying in a marriage where my voice is optional. You're really doing this? He called after me. I turned at the door. You already did. Then I closed it behind me, not to shut him out, but to start hearing myself. For years, I had whispered in corners of my own mind. Now, I was ready to speak. Ethan slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the hallway mirror. It echoed like he wanted it to mean something like a final word, but the only thing I felt was quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like space, like oxygen, like the moment after taking off a pair of shoes that never quite fit. He didn't pack a suitcase. He didn't say goodbye. He just left, assuming I'd follow, that I'd break, that I'd crawl back and apologize for embarrassing him. ID in single quotes T. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat at the table with my laptop. The sun streamed through the window like it was watching me. I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found the number from the real estate folder. Hans. I called. Hello? He answered. Hi, it's Lydia Collins. We met yesterday, my husband and I viewed the condo. A pause. Yes, of course. I just wanted you to know, I said quietly. I understood everything. In German. Another pause. Then, I thought maybe you did. His voice was softer now. I didn't mean to intrude, I said. I just needed to hear it. You're not the first woman to stand in that kitchen and pretend, he said gently. My daughter stayed in a marriage like that for 8 years. She speaks 4 languages but convinced herself silence was safest. That cracked something in me. Not pain this time, recognition. Is she okay now? I asked. She laughed. Bought her own place. Speaks whenever she wants. I smiled. I'd like to make an offer on the condo, myself. Hans paused, then said, let me know what you need. That evening, I sat at the same kitchen table where Ethan once made all the plans. Only now, I had job listings pulled up, ones asking for accounting experience and German fluency. I had both. I found one I liked. International firm, remote flexibility, clear salary. I applied before I could overthink. Then I opened a document titled Divorce Checklist and began highlighting items. I didn't cry. I didn't shiver. I just moved forward. Weeks passed. Paperwork filed. My offer on the condo accepted. Ethan was cold but compliant, as if waiting for my collapse. Instead, I handed him a signed agreement and thanked him for the check, his attempts to buy me out. What he didn't realize was that the moment he handed me that envelope, he gave me more freedom than he ever meant to. And I used it. Used it to move into the very space where my silence had once been exposed. The same walls, the same windows, but now the air was mine. A month later, I stood on my new balcony in bare feet, sipping wine as the sunset folded over the city. The wind teased my hair. My phone buzzed. Julian, the man from my certification class. Just checking in. Nothing heavy, nothing demanding, just kindness. He asked if he could stop by. I said yes. When he arrived, he brought tea instead of wine. We sat together, not to fill the silence, but to share it. He reached for my hand, not to lead, not to teach, not to control, just to connect. And I let him, because I had finally built a life where my voice didn't need permission. And I wasn't going to whisper anymore.